Thank you very much, Glenda. I'm happy to start this. I'm Tony Coelho, former member of Congress. I have white hair. I'm 82 years old, and I'm happy to be part of this effort, particularly anything dealing with disabilities and accessibility. That's a passion and a ministry of mine, so I'm happy to be part of this program. Tammy?
Thank you, Tony. Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Tammy Duckworth. I represent the great state of Illinois in the United States Senate. I am Asian American, and you can't see it on this video, but I do use a wheelchair because I am an amputee, and I am thrilled to be joining the great Tony Coelho and everybody on this call. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tammy. Why don't we start off first with what got you into digital accessibility, Tammy? What started that? Why is it important to you? Why do you think it's important to those of us in the disability community?
Well, I obviously, because I am a wheelchair user, became very active in accessibility issues uh, um, uh, because of my mobility challenges. But a lot of the wounded warriors, I'm a former soldier. I was wounded in Iraq. I actually recovered with a person who lost his eyesight. He took an IED to the face.
Hmm,
His name is Jason Pepper, Sergeant Pepper, which is a great name for an NCO.
that's right.
But I, but I watched him struggle in when we went from the old-fashioned phones to the smartphones, and it was a flat panel screen, and he went from being very self-sufficient, to the first generation flat screen phones, and really struggled with it. And then I started working with members of Access Living, which is a disability rights group in Illinois, and learn about really the challenges that people have with accessing government web pages and being able to buy a ticket to get on the train. I struggle because I can't reach things that are up high, but imagine when everything's a flat screen and you can't see. And so this is how I got involved in digital accessibility. Is about everyone needs access regardless of their disability, and we're all better off when we all can access and live in our lives independently.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I got involved as the primary author of the ADA. I was very involved in all aspects of disability. And I have epilepsy, so I have seizures for the last 64 years. The issue of access to the internet was not something I really recognized because as the author of the ADA, I thought the ADA covered the internet and that there shouldn't be a dispute. Some courts have said it does, other courts says it doesn't, so that hasn't been clear. So we basically had to get President Biden to establish a rule to make sure that it is accessible. I got involved because people from the hearing impaired, sight impaired, and physically impaired community came to me and said, we need your help to try to get this done. So that's how I got involved. And I think it's interesting that we have millions of individuals who want to participate in society like everybody else, but are restricted because of technology that keeps developing. And so it is critical that we provide for that accessibility. And now that's there. So the question is, what do you think is the greatest challenge in keeping it, Tammy? You have your legislation, you may want to talk about that. But also with the current administration, there's a lot of discussion about accessibility and is it needed and should we back off of a lot of it and so forth. And so what's your reaction to some of this? And I'll get into it as well.
Sure. Well, I feel like people with disabilities are on the chopping block when it comes to this new administration and what they can go after. You hear them talk about going after DEI, but I think a lot of people did not happen to catch on. But the fact that on I think his first day in office, the new Secretary of Transportation issued an order to tell people not to attend groups, affinity group meetings to include people with disabilities to promote disability access. And I actually called him up, Secretary Duffy, I said, what are you doing? Why, why,
Good.
why do you think that, disability is not an issue that we should be handling in the Department of Transportation? For goodness sakes, this is a real problem that we have. And so there's all sorts of stuff that's happening right now. There's legislation, but there's also monies that we have passed in previous legislation, like the ASAP Act, the All
Right.
Station
Right.
Accessibility Program, which was money put aside for 5 years to make all of our mass transit stations fully accessible. And that's not just for those with, physical disabilities in terms of being not being able to walk and using a wheelchair, but it's also about, as I mentioned, buying your train ticket. It's
Right.
about having web pages that you can navigate, and it's also for people with cognitive disabilities as well. That money is going to run out in 2026, and we're going to have to reauthorize it. So one of the things that I'm working on with the surface transportation reauthorization debate that's going to be happening this year is to try to make sure that we get ASAP in the reauthorization for another 5 years so that we can finish the work that we started.
Well, what I get concerned about is when people talk about DEI, some people add the A to it. And of course, that's accessibility. And what the administration is trying to do is to get anything that refers to DEI, and some people add the A. And that is critical for our community, not just people who are sight or hearing impaired or physically impaired, but the total community in regards to our basic rights that we've had for a while. And now there's an effort to maybe cut back on some of that. And so you've led an effort, Tammy, which I think all of us in the community appreciate, on the legislation that you've introduced. And you may want to explain a little bit about why that's important, and who is included in it, or that I think is what people might be really interested in.
Well, I think, what we're talking about is really the future of ADA and Section 508, and making sure that, especially in this political environment, we have to not allow them to undermine the ADA. You wrote the ADA. The problem is the ADA is constantly under attack, and we have to
Right.
defend the ADA. And I'm tired of playing defense on the ADA. I want to go on offense, right? And we need to make sure that Americans understand that these are civil rights. These are civil right laws. And it's our job not only to be ready to defend, but also to make sure that people understand how these laws affect them, even if they don't currently have a disability or love someone with a disability, which is hard to believe because we all know or love somebody with a disability. And if we live long enough, we will develop a disability.
That's exactly right.
Right. And so we need to be forward leaning, and that's what I'm trying to do. And this is what Section 508 is going to do. And again, there's a lot more work, and we have to introduce legislation everywhere, but to make sure that we preserve those basic civil rights that we were guaranteed in the ADA, but also expand those rights as well.
Right. And 508 basically requires anybody who gets federal funds, contractors, but also subcontractors, that they have to comply,
Yes.
and enforcing that becomes critical. As you know, a lot of laws are written, but they're mere pieces of paper. Enforcement is what makes it work. So we, in the administration, having them enforce the law is critical. If they're not willing to enforce it, the law doesn't have any impact, which is what is really sad. I think what people don't understand is that if people with disabilities uh, don't have access to the internet, they have to have somebody else do it for them. And people really don't appreciate, like during the pandemic, what people went through when we could use, without my epilepsy, I can do most of these things, of course, that I could do it, but people who have sight or hearing impaired had to go somewhere else, and I didn't have to. So it's the unfairness of that. And it includes millions of people. And what I think people miss is the economics of it. Those of us with disabilities, sight impaired, hearing impaired, physically impaired, spend money just like anybody else. And so the economics of it are, I think, aren't appreciated as much as it should be. So I think that your efforts, your willingness to fight, is really what's important for our community. For those on the program, I'm no longer in the Congress. I fight from the outside. Tammy's in the Senate, and she really fights from the inside. And so we need to have those of you that are participating, the role that you need to make is making sure that your elected officials know what you want, what you need, and that the law is there and it needs to be enforced. And I think sometimes we are reluctant to reach out and insist and demand. And I always take the view, speak up to power. Don't be afraid to speak up to power. All they can do is say no. You have the right and the obligation to ask and to some extent demand your rights because it is your rights.
Yeah,
So
and demand that they make their websites accessible,
yeah,
beginning with their websites, because many of my colleagues' websites are not accessible.
yeah. So anyway, that's with the 25th anniversary of the ADA coming up this year. I'm all excited about that. I think it's important that we make sure as that 35th anniversary comes up that all these accessibility issues are engaged and enforced. And I don't know, Tammy, if you have any words of encouragement for people that are listening, what they should do or not do in regards to elected officials.
Well, I think we need to come together as a community, celebrate, invite your elected officials to celebrations of the 35th anniversary, and then push them and drive them to action to get them to agree to protect the ADA, get them to agree to, my Website Accessibility Act and Section 508 and push them to move forward with it. But, first off, invite them to your celebrations and it is an important celebration to have. I do think, though, that people think, oh, the ADA is settled law, there's no problems here, but it gets eroded all the time and there are attacks on it all the time. And so start with a celebration, but then go on your front foot and push and bring those elected officials out to the celebration, but then hold them accountable. And talk to them, whether it's at home or in Washington, or send them letters or emails. It's really important to get them to commit to defending and supporting the ADA and getting to push to agree, to make their websites more accessible.
Well, and all of you should know that Tammy is working with members in the House to join in her bill. Congressman Steny Hoyer has agreed. And so that's a dynamite combination to get something done here. So I think it's exciting that Tammy is leading this effort and that hopefully we can get some consideration in these 2 years. So I applaud you for that, Tammy, and what you're doing and your staff for working with Hoyer's office and others to come on board. But that's something we really need.
Thank you. Well, everybody needs to come on board on it, whether it's my website and Software Applications Accessibility Act, or, unfortunately, Senator Casey lost his reelection, and he's been kind enough to let me introduce his bill, the
Oh, good.
508 Refresh Act. So we're not going to drop that. We're going to, I'm just going to pick up the baton. Thank you for
Good.
saying that I lead, but I'm just, I'm on that relay team and I'm running my leg of the relay team. I got handed the baton from Tom Harkin and from Tony, and I'm just going to pass it on to the next person when the time comes, but we're all part of this race. But everybody can come together and let's push and get these laws passed. And certainly there are persons with disabilities all over the country. We should be pushing our elected leaders to step up and support them and work as hard as they can to make your local government work for you. And it could be, your local public library webpage becoming accessible. I mean, you don't have to, change the federal government. I can try to work on that, but everywhere that there is government, whether it's where you go pay your utility bills or wherever, we should be holding all government officials accountable.
I think that what Tammy just said is really critical for us to understand. Anybody who gets federal funds So all these states and cities and so forth, but any federal contractor, subcontractor, they're required to participate under 508. And so you have a right to ask if they're doing that or demand that they do it, because it is the law. And so I think the only way we get it to work is if those of us in the community are willing to ask and demand, so that people understand they're not serving us, and that becomes really important. Um, uh, Tammy, we have a few more minutes. Anything, any particular message you want to give to the people at the conference?
I think that we could all do something. Oftentimes, people look to you and I as elected members, or having been elected members. That's the place where you make the difference. But if there's anything we've learned from the fight for civil rights for persons with disabilities, is that every single one of us makes a difference. Every single one of us can drive change to happen. And so, for everybody here at the conference, just a reminder that there is something that you can do, and you might think, oh, that's too micro. It's not too micro.
No.
It's your local elementary school. If you have a child in your local elementary school, is making sure that that information is accessible. But drive change at all levels, and together we'll make the big change happen. But if you let people get away with not doing it at the small levels, then it's really hard to do it at the federal level.
And my message would be that understand that those of us with disabilities are 26% of the population. If you include our loved ones, we're half of the population. And we're in every group. We're men, we're women, we're gay, we're anybody, any group that you have, Black, Hispanic, I'm Portuguese, Asian, whatever, all of us are involved in these different communities. And I think that the important thing is for us to understand that and be able to push. Remember that we're most effective as a disability community when we work with each other. When we got Biden to issue the rule on this whole effort of access to the internet, and basically, it was basically for businesses and local government and so forth. But what happened there is 181 different organizations, disability organizations, signed a letter to the president demanding that this be done. 181. And so when we work together, we can be very effective, we can be very powerful. So I urge people to reach out to their colleagues and the disability community to join with you in what you're trying to get done. So that is really important. All right. I think that we want to turn it over. And I know for Tammy and I, we really enjoyed being on this program. I love being with Tammy anytime I can. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to work with Tammy. So if you want to take it away now, Tammy and I are say thank you. Tammy, anything?
Nope, just thank you, everybody. It's been great to be on with all of you. Have a great rest of your conference.
Senator Duckworth, Representative Coelho, thank you both so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your unwavering commitment to disability rights. You've reminded us that we are on a journey, one that takes persistence and collaboration and courage to push forward, no matter the challenges. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've accomplished today. What an amazing first day of AXCON 2025. We began this morning with Alice Wong, who reminded us that accessibility is an act of love, not a burden. That ACT is the root word of action, and that true progress comes from working with the disability community, not for it. Now, we've closed this day with such an insightful conversation between Senator Duckworth and Representative Coelho, two leaders who have spent their lives making change happen through advocacy, policy, and sheer determination. If today has made one thing clear, It's this: progress doesn't just happen. We make it happen. It happens when we create new laws. It happens when we write accessible code, when we start crucial conversations. Change happens when we make the choice every single day to break down barriers and proactively build a more inclusive world. Most importantly, change happens because of you. You are a part of this movement. Your voice, your work, your advocacy, it all matters. So be inspired today so that tomorrow you can be an inspiration. Take what you've learned, the connections you've made, and the energy of this community and carry it forward. I'm going to pause here for just a moment because it's been a long day and it can be tiring learning so much. So I'm putting on my pink Care Bear pajama onesie. I have a rainbow on my belly, and I even put the hood up so that you can see the pink Care Bear head. Because now I want to encourage you to go get some rest and recharge and be ready for tomorrow, because we're just getting started. See y'all soon for day 2 of AXCON.